Welcome to the full moon forecast for the Capricorn 2024 full moon. I have my friend and colleague Justin Crockett here with me today, and we're going to talk about the full moon. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I'm excited to talk about this full moon.
Good. So, to get a hold of Justin, his website is justincrockettLZ.com, and his email is justin.lz@gmail, and my website is alightpath.com. So we have the Capricorn full moon tomorrow, and today is summer solstice. So what a powerful solstice and a full moon to combine the two energies. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, I think it's a great word to use, intense.
So the moon's at 1 degree of Capricorn in 7 minutes. And for the Seattle chart, that's in the second house. And the sun is in the eighth house at 1 degree in 7 minutes of Cancer. So Capricorn is a cardinal earth sign ruled by Saturn. Full moons are about endings, releasing, and adjusting and preparing to move forward. The Cancer sun is, they call the sun the ego part, but I think I'm going to have to come up with a different word for that. But the Cancer sun is nurturing. Saturn is in Pisces and it rules the moon. And Saturn's about structures, boundaries, and rules. And the caution with Saturn in Pisces could be blurred boundaries. Would you like to add anything?
No, I think you got it covered there, definitely. So Liz, this is kind of interesting as we look at the lunar mansions that this sun and moon are in. And for the audience that may not know what lunar mansions are, and as we look at the zodiac signs from 0 to 30 degrees there, um, they're sectioned off. In the Jyotish, in the Hindu, it's sectioned off. It's what's called padas, and there's a theme surrounding each of these what's called the lunar mansion in that area of the sky, and it has a meaning. And it's interesting that if for the audience today, we want to think about two key words that I would say, and I'd be curious what Liz has here in a few minutes as keywords for about the sun and moon, but it's actually roots and transformation. Transformation is a big key theme for this full moon. And so the sun, the lunar mansion or nakshatra that the sun is in for this full moon is called Ardra, and it's in the first pada, first section, and it's connected to the ruling deity Rudra, which is as an example of Lord Shiva and represents transformation and change. But it's more related to storms and change that comes quickly, kind of destructively. And so that's why it is sometimes called the star of oppression. It's kind of how you make that change, how you go about it. And it's the ruling planet, of course, is Rahu, the north node, because in Jyotish or Vedic, the lunar nodes are considered planets. So this is the north node, and the basis above is below here is to hunt or search and to reach a goal. For the moon, which is opposing that, we see again also a very transformative deity, because of course the ruling planet is Ketu here. So it's the opposite. It's the south node, lunar south node, and the ruling deity is Niruti, which is the goddess of dissolution or calamity or destruction. So the symbol here is roots, because Mula, as a lunar mansion or nakshatra, relates to roots or getting to the root of something, going to its foundations. And so this is a nakshatra lunar mansion that relates to investigating. But because this particular pada or section 3 here is ruled by Gemini, there's an expression thing going on or informing thing going on. So kind of really basically what we're looking at here, Liz, with these lunar mansions is that it's about like digging deep to transform something to its roots, whatever this is showing up in our life, the sun and moon in our chart, and is also about investigating and then also expressing or informing or talking about or expressing about this change that's going to go on.
Well, I find that very interesting, both of them, because we're having big solar storms. We're having tropical storms that are bringing great amounts of water to Florida and I believe somewhere in Texas and probably northern Mexico. So it's really interesting that they correlate to that. And then the roots, you could say Capricorn is the family tradition, so that there's roots there, and then Cancer is about family, so there's roots
Yeah.
there. So um, it goes right along with what we're talking about today with this Capricorn full moon.
And and so that said, I would say that as people look at this in their astrology charts, to where this full moon, the sun and the moon, this full moon is happening, that this is a good time, and they may be experiencing some um, huge transformation in those houses, or some type of transformation is being called for in these houses. And of course, as we look at these, we'll look at it a little bit later today. I think that's also related to squares, which you're really good at saying it's all about action with them.
Action and change, and sometimes transformation, we don't even notice it, but sometimes it's very noticeable. So sometimes it can be subtle, but sometimes it can be very intense or
Right.
super noticeable. So okay, I have a quote here. Happiness leads to achievement more often than achievement leads to happiness. And that's by Alan Cohen. And then here's the astrology chart with the ascendant circled in purple. So we have an ascendant of 25 Scorpio, and Scorpio is certainly about transformation. And
Yeah.
the midheavens 14 degrees of Virgo. And I know you talked about communication on some level. So, Virgo is certainly about communication. And then again, the sun is circled in a light blue color in Cancer, and the moon in a yellow color in Capricorn. And the ruling planet, um, Saturn, has the yellow arrow, and the ruler of the ascendant has the pink arrows to Mars and Pluto. So then we're going to jump into the Sabian symbols, and they were channeled by spiritualist medium Elzie in 1925 with the help of Mark Edmund Jones. And so do you want to start with the Sabian symbol for the ascendant, please?
Sure. So as we look at this, the Scorpio 24 degrees, the concept here is, after having heard an inspired individual deliver his Sermon on the Mount, crowds are returning home. The key note here is the need to incorporate inspiring experiences and teachings into everyday living. The keyword: challenge to transformation.
So maybe some of us won't want to make changes in our lives or transformate the transformation. So Scorpio 25, an X-ray photograph, the capacity to acquire knowledge of the structural factors in all existence. Structural knowledge.
And then the Scorpio 26 degrees is American Indians making camp after moving into a new territory. The key note here is the ability to adjust swiftly to a new situation. Of course, we're talking about change here, by tuning into its requirements. And so, keyword here is efficient functioning in all life situations.
So it might be hinting at that, is the structure sustainable, and does it function properly, or does it need some change?
Right. And also, I think, when we talk about deeper transformation, I think that's related to that 24 degrees, which is incorporating internally that transformation. It's just not on the surface, you know, it goes deeper.
And I didn't mention before we started the Sabian symbols that we look at three. So we look at what was leading up to what is the now and what's next.
Yeah.
That's why we use three symbols.
Yep.
Okay, then the Sabian symbol for 14 Virgo for the midheaven We have Virgo 13. A powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria, focusing of the collective needs for order and structural independence. And the key word is charisma.
And then Virgo 14 degrees, an aristocratic family tree, a deep reliance upon the ancestral roots of individual character. Root power is essential to seed achievement here.
And then Virgo 15, a fine lace handkerchief, an heirloom from ancestors. And it talks about culture, and it could be the family roots again.
Yeah.
So do you want to like do an overview of those three?
Yeah, it just, knowing that the midheaven a lot of times is about yeah, how we look at it as our higher goals or what we're ultimately trying to accomplish here. I think there's, being that it's Virgo, we're trying to, this transformation is to improve something in our life, because Virgo is all about healing and improving things. And I think that part of that is through, we see here that there's a family thing going on. And you mentioned it before with the Cancer Capricorn. There is an undercurrent of family theme here with this full moon.
Thank you. And then do you want to start with the Sabian symbols
Sure.
for Cancer?
Yeah. So for the sun, Gemini 30 degrees, we go back towards it. What it was led to it, a parade of bathing beauties before large beach crowds. Keynote here is the setting of social standards through personal excellence and competition. The show is over. Now comes the hour of decision.
And then Cancer 1, on a ship, the sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. Radical change of allegiance. It's a symbolized act of a point of no return, reorientation, stabilization.
And then the Cancer 2 degrees is a man on a magic carpet hovers over a large area of land. And the keynote here is the ability to expand one's consciousness by stabilizing one's point of view at a higher level. And so one gains elevation in the third dimension of consciousness, basically giving you a higher perspective of what's going on.
Well, and this is really interesting because even though it doesn't say transformation, the sailors on the ship having a new flag, so reorienting, so there's been some kind of transformation. And the one previous to that, it could be that people were looking at what life is, what everything is, and like, well, now I want to make these changes. And,
Yeah.
Maybe to emotionally disconnect on some level of and allow yourself through meditation or a chanting to restabilize.
Totally agree. You couldn't have said it better.
Okay, and then for the Capricorn moon, go ahead and start.
Yeah, so we look at Sagittarius 30 degrees. The concept here is the Pope blessing the faithful. Keynote is the need to pay homage to traditional values upon which the invisible community of the spirit is built. So we have personalized worship here.
Okay, and then Capricorn 1, an Indian chief claims power from the assembled tribe. The power and responsibility implied in any claim for leadership. It's authority.
And then Capricorn 2 is really still, we're dealing with authority here, but now it becomes something of that could be destructive. The keynote or the concept here is 3 rose windows in a Gothic church, one damaged by war. So the necessary realization by any individual making a violent use of collective power that it could lead to inevitable destruction of some of the values ensuring group integration. Waste is the opposite of group integration. So can I just say something about when we look at what I was talking about earlier about the lunar mansions and how there's that destructive power of transformation? I think this is sort of, we see this again in this Capricorn 3 degrees or 2 degrees of how sometimes change can be destructive, or we can see it as destructive.
Well, it can be until you make all the changes and readjust and implement it, and people get used to it. So that's very possible.
Yeah.
So
How we
thank you.
how we how we make those changes, right?
Well, yeah, and some people might be like not happy that a certain change happened, but then in the end, sometimes we can say, "Oh, that was really good that that happened."
Right.
Until we get there, sometimes we're not appreciative of the changes that take place.
Right. Right.
So with this full moon, we have a few planets out of bounds, and out of bounds means that their declination or latitude exceeds 23 degrees and 27 minutes north or south. So we have the moon, Mercury, and Venus all out of bounds. Um, I heard the other day somebody said, "Do you feel like you're out of bounds?" And it was like, wow, that's kind of rings true. So when a planet's out of bounds, it's answering to itself. It's not answering to the sun because the sun puts in the boundary, so to speak. And so they're acting on their own. So um, these energies can act a little different than what they normally would. And then we have the asteroid Vesta, Ceres, and Pallas Athena also out of bounds. So be
Can I?
gentle with yourself, be gentle with other
Yeah.
people.
I'd be
Um,
curious what you think, because we do have that strong Venus Mercury conjunction with the sun right now in Cancer. How do you think that out of bounds plays out here between these three planets?
well, it's almost like the Venus and Mercury are dancing to their own tune and ignoring the sun, so to speak.
But he's right there too. You know? Yeah.
Because it's like the sun, it could be like if you were the parent, the sun, we'll just say the parent is the sun, and Venus and Mercury are your children. They might not be exactly cooperating with you at this time, but that doesn't mean it's totally a bad thing, because sometimes
Right.
we need to experience things on our own and find information. So we might be finding something that we wouldn't have found if we were staying within that space. And we
Right.
also have uh, uh, Saturn going to go retrograde on the 29th in Pisces. So that's about boundaries, and that rules this moon. So it's feeling that already, that it's like, I don't know if I want these boundaries or these limitations.
And you know, something I might add about that whole Mercury, Venus, and Cancer with the sun there, that since the Mercury and Venus are out of bounds, and Mercury represents emotional communications, and Venus are emotional desires, that this could be a time when we might, because they're out of bounds, that communications may be a little bit more emotional with this conjunction, and stronger because it's next to the sun, and, you know, and so stronger emotional communications that may be a little out of bounds at this particular point in time, maybe.
Exactly. So another occurrence is the moon is at a lunar standstill or a lunistice. I think that's how you say it. That's a hard word to pronounce. And that means when the moon reaches the farthest point north or south in the month, and it appears to stay in the sky longer. The moon and the earth are tilted at their maximum. This occurs every 18.6 years, and it will go from June of 2024 through December of 2025 on the full moons. The last lunar standstill was October of 2015, and the next one will be 2034. The last major standstill was in 2006, and the next major one will be next year in 2025. Um, it'll be most extreme around the equinoxes in September of this year and March of 2025. It also has an influence to increase the tides, which the full moon already does, but then it'll even more so. Um, but what I read, it wasn't like that they would be extreme, but it does increase them.
Hmm.
The best time to observe this is when the moon rises or sets. And of course, if you have a clear view of the horizon and away from the city lights, and coastal areas are the best.
That would make sense.
So let's get into the chart.
Yeah. Well, you know what I really think the big theme of this is we have a grand square in the chart here, because both the sun and the moon are squaring the nodes, and of course they're also, the sun and moon are squaring Neptune. So this definitely means transformation in the collective, Neptune being a collective planet, and with the sun and moon squaring it, definitely means changes. Could be changes within the family, the human family, as you're saying, Cancer, Capricorn, and then of course because the Rahu and Ketu, the lunar nodes, are in Libra and Aries, definitely looking still, we're still dealing with a relationship theme going on here with this grand square, two T squares, but it's a grand square.
Well, and even relationships within family, the family dynamics,
Yeah.
and it could be the elders in the family, because as I have older parents, so there's always issues to help the elderly with things that are harder for them to do as they mature in age.
Can I say something about Mercury again?
Absolutely.
because it's part of this T square, right? And I going back to that 1 degree we saw with the Cancer Sun, where it talks about a reorientation of the sailors lowering a flag and raising a new one. And I generally find that this particular Sabian symbol relates to what a lot of times the Cancerian energy cancers are learning, or people with a lot of planets in Cancer. It's about healthy, reorientating one's emotions to a healthy outlook, right? And structuring your emotions, or emotional expression, or emotional desires, or whatever planet is in that sign of Cancer emotionally, is about reorientating them, about changing them to a more positive perspective. And I think that may be what I see a little bit of what Mercury is informing us here with our thoughts. Our Because there was actually in a recent podcast, somebody was asking what's the difference between actually what comes first, thinking or emotions. And so, that I think Mercury's really informing us a lot here of what we might want to look at, point towards. It's kind of giving us a pointer towards maybe some transformation of how we think and feel.
Yes, and that Mercury, I want to point out, is ruling that midheaven at 14 degrees of Virgo.
Yeah,
And
it's
this
out of
full,
bounds.
yeah, and it's out of bounds. And when you say thinking or feeling, it's like, wow, that's interesting, because I know I think a lot, but I feel a lot too. So it's like, I don't know which comes first. But I do, it's like I'm just thinking about it. It's like I have to switch back and forth between the two. They're not one.
Right.
So that's interesting. And this full moon, the moon's in the second house and the sun's in the eighth house. So um, you could say the second house of my values and the eighth house of other people's values, or the country's values, or the culture's values, or it could be your family's values. So transforming maybe what those are, because it could be the values that your family and your school and where you grew up at had certain values, but now that you've matured, you could change of what you want to be your value system.
Right.
Okay. Oh, um, you would. Do you want to talk about the Chiron still really close to Hygeia? Because we talked about that earlier. The
Oh
conjunction.
yeah, so there are some important pairings here that I think that is important that are affecting this grand square. Um, the two T squares are grand square, and that is that Venus and Sun are still conjunct here. Mercury's technically conjunct; it's separating, And then we've also got we're still feeling the after effects of the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, Jupiter separating. And then the Chiron Hygeia conjunction, which you and I just did a show on about that cycle. And of course, Hygeia is separating. Um, and so, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of healing going on with, and how that's, opposite of the, of what's going on in Libra, working with relationships and healing self.
Well, and as that Jupiter is pulling away from Uranus, Mars is applying and getting closer to Uranus to make a conjunction next in July, the next month, about in the middle of the month. I don't remember the exact date, but
Yeah.
and then I remember you telling me something about Pluto. Did you want to talk about that now or later?
Well, there is for those that love asteroids, and we didn't include on here because we can't put everything on here. But there is a unique asteroid which has been shadowing Pluto. It's called Osiris. Osiris was, of course, the god of death in Egyptology, Egyptian myth and religion and magic. And Osiris has been shadowing Pluto, and so I feel like it's really it's kind of like when Jupiter hits a planet, it's actually increasing the intensity of Plutonian energy right now wherever Pluto's at, because Osiris is shadowing it.
Well, and that could be why I'm cleaning like mad and helping my mom clean out her place and, releasing and letting go of those things that, like, why do you keep it so long? And what am I going to need this for? And
Yeah,
so that's
finishing up
great.
on Capricornian energies there.
Okay, and then we have a grand trine with ascendant Neptune and Vesta. And then we have a sextile with Mars and Mercury. So do you want to speak to these, Justin?
Well, I want to go back to the Mercury thing. I know I'm beating Mercury up here because it's out of bounds and it's got a lot going on there. I think this is auspicious in a way, having Mars um, sextiling again. I think this uh, intensifies the effects of Mercury with Mars sextiling it. What do you think?
Well, I think that Mars is encouraging Mercury to even be more out of bounds than it already is. It's like, yeah, kick up your feet and, speak your mind, so to speak. But I would caution to be careful because you can't take words back.
And Mars in Taurus is not necessarily a risk taker. It's in an Earth sign, and it is in Taurus, which can sometimes be obstinate. It kind of stubborn, or needs to evaluate. People with Mars and Taurus need to contemplate before they take action, and so I think it's also informing us here before we express something maybe emotionally that we want to express, with Mercury being out of bounds here, and this transformation energy going on, that maybe Mars is informing us to contemplate before we speak, maybe before we take action, maybe, and maybe the value of what we say too, right? Taurus, what's the value of what we want to emotionally express?
And is it worth to say something? Because sometimes it's probably better just to let it slide or go and not get there.
Be
Um,
kind. Be kind,
well,
right?
it's like, sometimes somebody can say something and it triggers you or upsets you, but it's like, is it really worth it to even go into a debate about it? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's not. So then that grand trine of the ascendant and Neptune and Vesta um, in um, mutable signs. It's mutable and fixed, so because it's an out of sign trine. So um, it's a flowing energy of, perhaps doing the transformation that we're being asked to do. And, Vesta is about our home and hearth. So like I've been, cleaning out my home and helping my mother clean out her home. So, making that transition. But it's really interesting, the Neptune there, and it's going to go retrograde. I think it's July 4th, if I remember, or maybe it's the 3rd, but
Mhm.
it's going to go retrograde soon. And it's really interesting, a few things that my mother has decided, well, she can't quite get rid of. And it's like, I think to myself, that's interesting. But we have a plan of, how to clean up her place a little bit and release some things that she's kept, and even myself cleaning and releasing things in my home that I've been here for about 6 years. And it's like, well, somebody gave me this, and that was really nice that they gave it to me, but I've never used it. So out in the garage sale pile it goes. So,
Awesome.
and hopefully somebody will, find my item that they can use for them. So,
Right.
and what the idea of home and hearth is. So, and how it should change.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go into the lunar phase family. Is there anything else you want to speak to of this chart for the full
Not
moon?
really, not really. I think you got it covered. Excellent.
Okay. So the lunar phase family, or gestation, the four lunar phases are the new phase, the first quarter, the full moon or the full phase, and the last quarter. They complete a monthly lunar cycle every 29 and a half days. And this system was um, discovered by Pessin, and she has a really good book out that, if you're interested in this, it's very helpful. So the new phase is starting new things or going places. The first quarter could be like packing your bag for a trip. The full phase, enjoying the trip, and the third quarter, sharing your memories and paying the bills. So we're at the full moon phase, and that's highlighted in yellow. And the new phase began in December of 2022. So if you keep a journal or can reflect back to what was going on then, you could have initiated or started something at that time, and now it's in its full phase of activating that. And lots of times the full moon is reevaluating, do I want to keep this, do I want to continue on with it? um is it time to get more serious, or is it time to just let it go? And then we have a yearly lunar phase, um, and it should say Capricorn new moon, not Scorpio new moon, on January 11th of 2024. And then now we're at the full phase, June 21st. So if you can reflect back to what you started in January and see how that's going. And I started my YouTube channel then, and we're just flowing right along, and have added
Yeah,
more
you're doing great.
episodes and keep going. So,
Yeah, you're doing
um,
great. You're doing a lot of really great podcasts. That's awesome.
okay. And then, do you have any suggestions what people can do for this full moon?
Yeah, I would say back to what I was saying before, just to have what the astrology is informing us that this moon is about transformation and change. And a lot of times we think, oh gosh, if I haven't made that change and I'm getting into the waning moon cycle, I can't make changes. And yes, you can. That's an evaluation phase. So I think this is important to look at where this full moon, sun and moon are showing up in those houses in your chart, where are they at, right? And see what changes is calling to you, people there in those places, and just lean into that.
Well, and family was big in the chart, so it could be of time now that we're getting to nicer weather here in the Northwest, of having a picnic or having get-togethers with your family, or making time to go and visit your family, possibly.
Yeah, and I want to say there was one other sub theme there that I forgot to mention, which is about ethics and morals. With this, um, that some of the change that some people may try to drive at this point can speak to something they feel ethically or morally called to do. So that could be something that's also affecting this change.
Right. So I would say be gentle with ourselves and others,
Be
and
kind. Be kind.
embrace the change. Sometimes it, like, to clean up a certain spot in my home or even my mother's home, it's like it can look like, oh, I'm making this huge mess. But then when you haul off the stuff that you don't want and you rearrange it and put it back, oh, it looks so nice. And to me, it feels better, but I'm a very feeling person.
Right.
So enjoy it. I want to thank all those that are watching live and that come back and watch later on. Thank you. We appreciate your support. And
And if anybody, we could say, right, Liz, that if anybody has any questions that they can email and we can maybe address the questions on air. You think so?
sure, or you can leave comments below on the YouTube channel if you have questions. And if you want to know where this is in your personal astrology chart, Justin and I both do consultations. And the upcoming episodes, we have the monthly forecast for July coming up, and we're going to have a second full moon in Capricorn. And then the Astrology Star Sisters, I seem to be doing 3 episodes a month, so that's fun. So there's more of those for you. And then Justin and I will be on Talk Cosmos on June 30th, and that's live at 1 p.m. And you can watch that on my YouTube channel. And Justin, what are you doing?
Well, I'm doing a podcast with Michael Bartlett, a wonderful, amazing astrologer out of New Mexico. And we do a podcast called The Relationship Guys, where we look at relationships. And we just finished our 3rd episode. We're doing 2 episodes a month of the podcast. So check it out. And we look forward to talking more about relationships.
Yeah, and I've seen it and I enjoy it. So thank you and Michael for doing that. And Justin and I both have newsletters that we send out, so you can sign up for those. And so Justin's website is justincrocketelzie.com, and my website is alightpath.com. So thank you for coming and joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.